Biblical literature sounds, I think, to many people, kind of including myself, quite boring.
It's complicated.
But actually, a lot of these texts are really exciting and they're doing really cool things. They're really dramatic, they're really moving. Sometimes they're changing the Bible story in quite interesting ways.
I've never done anything like it before. It's really interesting.
Apart from the plastic babies, every single idea that I've gone, can we do this? They've gone, that's a great idea, yeah.
When we first had the script through, between us we could read about half of the words.
If that.
Yeah, if that.
I mean, it's very alien to me working with all these acrobats flipping around me. That was quite surprising.
It's a challenge, but I think it's one that is not insuperable to present it to a modern audience.
Back in 2007, I started thinking about doing a research project on medieval English biblical poems. And I wanted to look at all the ones that are quite short and retell episodes from the Old Testament. And one of these poems is The Life of Job, which is this 15th century poem that's just in one manuscript, which is currently in the Huntington Library in California. And it's really obscure, like nobody really reads it. It's written in very formal, over-the-top, quite flowery, Latinate language.
It's verse, it's rhythmic, it's also, in some cases, quite theologically dense, so the ideas behind it are quite complicated, or maybe unfamiliar to people now.
On a first read, it's a pretty boring poem. This happens, Job's patient, this happens, Job patient.
I just got interested in why did somebody write this poem at this time? Because actually it was a time when people were getting really nervous about translating the Bible into English. And I started noticing that it keeps saying here and it keeps saying this. It seems to be narrating something outside itself, which made me think, oh, this is actually a sort of script or a narration for a play. Then I came up with the idea for the present project, which was all about, well, if I think that's what it was, then let's try performing it and see if it works in performance. I have edited this poem, I know it really well, I can talk about the language and its literary qualities, but I don't have any real idea how to turn that into a piece of theatre.
I have for many years now been experimenting with performance research in early theatre. When Cathy said, oh, I think this poem might have been performed, we said, yeah. We think so too.
I had this idea that I wanted to try and stage it as a play, and I'd sort of asked her very nervously, would she be willing to direct it? And she said yes. And I thought, okay, well, I'm in really safe hands because Elizabeth's got such a depth of kind of knowledge and experience. She's a scholar of medieval theatre, but she's also directed lots of things.
We know that the medieval world was full of performances. Even when people read to themselves, they read out loud. So there was much more of a culture of listening to things. That's what I love about this medieval culture. It's different sensory priorities is another interesting thing.
She thought it would be really important to try and get some musicians. So I had a contact in the medieval music world, and that's how we found Kira and then Will.
I vaguely knew the story of Life of Job. I mean, I'm sure you're
Yeah,
a bit
I
more
knew
familiar,
something
but
about it.
yeah.
Elizabeth also thought it's got to be spectacular. It's got to feel like something really special and exciting.
We looked at it and we thought, how do you do houses falling down and this kind of thing? And actually one of my research team, Lucy, said, you could do it with acrobats. And so Cathy brilliantly found Gwen and we got to work on that.
It felt like a really nice trio of skills, actually. When I first started having a chat with Cathy and Elizabeth on Zoom, they talked about the play, but we talked about almost everything but the text. And I said, would you send it to me? And they were like, yeah, sure, we'll send you the text plus our notes that we've made on what it is. Didn't make any sense to me at all.
It's quite ornate language. It's late medieval, so it's obviously a little bit inaccessible if you haven't studied medieval literature.
And there were some bits in Latin. I didn't even know how some of the words were pronounced. So I then asked for some interpretation and Elizabeth sent me her notes. Didn't help.
I think for the acrobats it was quite difficult when we started rehearsing because they literally didn't understand the lines. It was difficult for them to use the lines to cue the action.
We've never done a project like this at all with medieval text or anything, so it's interesting.
I've never attempted to read Middle English before.
It feels very new. I'm very used to music cues instead of like scripture.
So this is obviously a big challenge with how do you bring a medieval English play to a modern audience. You know, it's written in these 7-line stanzas and with this quite ornate language, and you don't want to lose that. But how do you make it so that people still understand what's going on? So luckily Elizabeth had a lot of experience with this, and we decided to do it in basically modernised pronunciation, but not to change any of the vocabulary.
What's quite satisfying to me is that sense of, on the page, it's the same words now as they would have been in 1438.
But what was really nice was that Jed, who's narrating, he's doing a brilliant job. And when he speaks it out loud, it all starts to make much more sense. And even if you don't understand every word, you can get the gist.
But Job, for all this, his patience ever observed. Because the text is a bit unfamiliar, from an actor's perspective, it forces you to pay attention. You can't just pick it up and read it, you've got to work on it and you've got to understand the meanings and the rhythms.
In the first set of rehearsals in March, I would be like, there's an extra syllable in this word, or you're saying j, but it's actually g.
I think to be a good actor, going into medieval texts and learning how to be forensic, learning how to be exact and precise is a really useful skill to have.
And we finally got together with the actors, and after it had been narrated a few times and we'd picked, I was like, oh, right.
Cathy and I are obviously used to teaching medieval literature and Gwen is used to training circus performers, but we are also all learning lots. You know, we have to look up some of the words as well.
My job at that stage was to go, like I would with a normal theatre text, is to go through the text and pick out the bits. Oh, right, that would be quite fun to have some juggling there, or that's quite an emotional moment, so maybe we could have this there, or, you know, there's room for some tricks there, or this is the fun bit, or this is the serious bit.
Here's some ideas, play with it, make what you can. So that's a lovely position to be in. It's nice to have that sort of creative freedom.
When we were first sort of workshopping the piece back in March, and I spent 2 or 3 days in rehearsal, I just thought, this is the most fun I've ever had, pretty much. Just that sort of lovely feeling of people collaboratively bringing their kind of best game.
Because everyone's got such different backgrounds and everyone has such different expertise, seeing that all brought together is really interesting, or learning what a hurdy-gurdy is.
The hurdy-gurdy is fascinating. I wish I had one, but I think I'll leave that to you and others to do, because it's really nice to play along with, because it's the same tone with a bit of a rasp to it.
It's such an old instrument. I mean, it was being used for a couple of centuries before this play was being written as well, but there are many different types. And by a happy coincidence, mine is of just about the right period for this play as well.
I mean, you look at a lot of religious stories, it revolves around performance and how you convey it.
Like giving parts of the text and go, how do you feel that can be shown acrobatically? How can the devil be performed through acro?
I distinctly remember a meeting with Cathy and Elizabeth where I was like, can we have like loads of plastic camels? Thinking that's not very medieval, is it, plastic camels? And they were like, yeah, that sounds great. And then, can I buy some sheep as well? Yeah, sure. It says oxen in the play. Can I buy some oxen? What about 1,000 plastic babies? No, okay, draw the line at 1,000 plastic babies. Job is inflicted with sores. How do we depict that? It'd be great to do it with some manipulation of juggling balls or something. It's like, well, how do you get them to stick? I know, you know a Velcro vest. So Elizabeth and Cathy, can I make a scab vest?
Equally important is the sound and the music. And what the musicians are doing is fantastic. We know that music has the power to create mood and so on, but you really feel that the way this verse and this music are interplaying is creating a set, in a way. It's creating the atmosphere, it's creating everything that the acrobats can then use visually. And when I first read it, and I tried to think about it, what happened first was that I heard it as a soundscape before I could even begin to imagine how the acrobats were going to do what they did. I could hear it.
So all they'd done was given me the script and a list of moods that they wanted created. So we did a bit of back and forth and came up with some ideas, some pieces that might work. Holy music, party music, Satan music. And so we also had to think about instrumentation and what was going to create those sorts of moods. So we went away and, you know, all the tunes are tunes of that period, but then we also thought about how to instrument them, what instruments to use.
Cromorns are a favourite. Well, I've been a favourite with me for years and years, and they're the curved instruments with a reed at the top. And they're fascinating to look at, and they always were intended that way, to be a sort of celebratory instrument. You lift up and play them several at once and recall the glories of ancient Greece and ancient Rome, the theatre actually of those times.
I work on late medieval literature generally, and I think what really interests me is why were things meaningful for people in the Middle Ages, or how did they experience them? What are they getting out of retelling a Bible story? Is it that they're sort of imagining themselves into a different world, or is it, oh, this guy seems like a really good example for us to follow, or is it just this is a really exciting story? So I'm really interested in that question of what's the sort of cultural or social function of a text. And also sometimes they're doing kind of political work of saying this is the way to treat your wife, or this is why you should always obey your lord and stay in your place in the hierarchy.
There's so much in this little play, performance poem, that is not in the biblical account of Job. Job's wife is given a much more prominent role than she is in the Bible. In this Middle English script, it's telling her off that is the thing that God reprimands Job for, which I think is really, really interesting.
Using these plays as a metric through which you can check how society has evolved and changed, that's interesting.
Winterbourne Barn is just an absolutely beautiful building, and it's in this gorgeous setting next to a medieval church, and it does feel like you've kind of gone back in time when you go there. And we thought it would be nice to bring something that sort of seems quite academic into more of a kind of community space. It is not sort of full of university professors who think about medieval literature all the time, but more people who are looking for a nice Friday night out and, you know, maybe a bit interested in medieval culture.
The point of doing it in that space is precisely that it's not a theatre, but it's the kind of space that was used before theatres were built, you know, before the mid-16th century, when all performance happened in a non-theatre space. Such a joy of medieval early theatre is it happened in the street, it happened in churches, it happened in dining halls, it happened in the pub garden, things happening around us. They contribute to our understanding of the environment that we're in.
Most merciful Lord, by thine abundant goodness, this rightful man Job, with great hospitality of men and women, ever kept in perfect riches.
The nice thing about performing to like a dinner, you've got a very close connection with people there, you know, the people in the chairs. They're not, you're on a stage here and they're 10 metres away over there. You can really get up and close, you can make eye contact with people. I like that sort of deep connection with the crowd. I think it makes it easier for me.
We love doing street shows and performing where it is almost like you are right with the audience in their space, because it doesn't feel like something you can watch on telly. It suddenly feels like, oh my God, it's right here in front of me.
Especially with some of the acrobatics and juggling, being able to bring that right in front of people is really exciting.
Money had he none to reward them after his will, but gave them the broad scabs of his sore body, which turned unto pure gold, as saith the story.
I don't do much informal performance. It's usually in a theatre setting and people have sat down and that's what they're coming for, rather than they're here for a feast and we're a performance as part of that. If I, as narrator, can embed myself within the audience and provide that link between the actors and the audience, that will be me doing my job successfully.
Never seen anything like it before. It's something completely new to me.
I was quite surprised at how many words that we still use now seem quite old and traditional, but you know what their meaning is, even though you don't normally use them in daily life.
I kind of understood it because we've been learning about Old English language in school.
I thought it was so fun. I thought it was such a great way to introduce a Bible story to people who may not know it, and in a really fun way, because that way it sticks in your memory.
The whole atmosphere of having a dinner here, performers interacting with the audience, inviting audience onto the stage, in this dance that we had at the end was very, very engaging.
Oh, the music was really good. I thought that it helped add a good effect to the thing.
I'm not going to forget the people standing on the shoulders of the other people floating around. That was so fun.
I won't forget this in a hurry, that's for sure. It's been very good.
The job of a theatre maker is to go, here's some text. I'm going to take that and I'm going to make it into a 3D visceral experience where you as an audience member are emotionally engaged with the characters and you are taken along a journey and you are changed by it in some way.
The novelty never wears off. It's always amazing to think that this hasn't been seen or heard in centuries. It's absolutely incredible.
Theatre is such an amazing force at every level. I mean, for teaching both audience and actors, it's an incredible thing. I mean, what people learn from being in a play together is just amazing.
I'd love to do more of, it doesn't even need to be medieval, but taking a text that hasn't really been explored before. How do we meld text and story with circus so that it works?
I'd been sort of saying for a decade or more, oh, I think this is a play, I think this is a play. But I also kind of think it's a bit boring and inaccessible, and it's a bit of a conservative piece. I'm not sure how much I like it. And then when we actually performed it, people loved it. People were moved to tears in the audience. People laughed and really enjoyed the kind of fun of it all, and you get quite kind of taken up with the drama in a way that I'd never had been on the written page. And we made something that was so much better than I could ever have imagined.